Iris. Somewhere between the orbits of Neptune and Pluto, there's an enormous eyeball watching the solar system, and according to everyone who's bothered to study it, the thing has been laughing at us the entire time. This is the Iris, also known as the Hungry Eye, the main antagonist of Gemini home entertainment, and easily the most patronizing planet in fiction. It's a sentient rocky world somewhere between Neptune and Saturn in size, shaped like a giant orange eye with a jet black pupil that's actually an organic orifice leading into the planet's interior, because of course it is. And the Iris has been quietly redecorating our solar system for who knows how long. Its first attempt was Jupiter, and if you've ever wondered what the Great Red Spot actually is, Gemini's records describe it as an open wound left from the Iris trying and failing to mutate the gas giant. When that didn't work, it moved on to Neptune, which it successfully turned into a lens, basically a planetary laser pointer for firing beams of mutation straight at Earth. That's how the gardeners, the wood crawlers, nature's mockery, the fake people, the wretch, and the roots all got here. The Iris is the showrunner. Every horrible creature in Gemini home entertainment is on its payroll. It's also a hive mind, capable of assimilating people like Jack Dean and using them as puppets. But the part that really sells it is the Crusader 5 mission. In 1991, a probe got sent out past Neptune, and instead of finding empty space, it found a cluster of mutated moons orbiting the Iris, all named after parts of an eye. The probe got pulled into the Iris's pupil, traveled down its esophagus through a respiratory spinal cortex, and ended up inside what the recording calls a conscious mind, at which point the signal cut for 7 months. So yeah, it's got a digestive system, a spine, a throat, and it's so powerful that it casually ate a spacecraft like a Tic Tac. Gabriel. If you grew up in Sunday school being told the Archangel Gabriel was the messenger of God, the Mandela Catalog would like a word with you, because in this universe, Gabriel is the first alternate, a Type 2 reality-distorting entity that intercepted the Annunciation, replaced the real Gabriel, and personally sabotaged Christianity from the inside before it ever got off the ground. He shows up to Mary in his disguised form, long blonde hair, white robes, the whole Renaissance painting aesthetic, and delivers a message that, when you turn the captions on, reads in binary, "I am the one true savior, I must reverse the delusion. Joseph is next." Mary, understandably, complies. He then drops by Joseph's window at night, tells him, "I will fool the shepherds, I will know their greatest fear, I will know your greatest fear," and proceeds to do exactly that. When the sensor box finally lifts off his face, he's a 3-meter-tall lanky horror with a wide, cartoonish smile, bulging eyes, and a really long face, and he's apparently been smiling like that the whole time. His big calling card is just claiming to be the one true savior of humanity, which is either Satan in disguise or something far worse, a middle-aged HR lady. But Volume 4 confirms he's indeed Satan by hinting that Gabriel is the snake from the Garden of Eden, which means he's been running this con since literally Adam. How do you even deal with an ancient evil entity like this? He shows up to torment Noah, kills Dave Lee in a church for the crime of following the shepherd, and gets rid of a woman named Jane in front of an actual shepherd in Volume 5 before presumably killing the shepherd too. His ultimate goal is destroying human civilization by hijacking the entire concept of salvation, which is honestly a pretty efficient strategy compared to the other cosmic horrors on this list. Richard Nixon. The monument mythos took the 37th President of the United States, gave him reality warping powers, and put him on the moon to deliberate over whether or not humanity deserved his presence. This is the Nixonverse. Now, in our universe, Nixon ran against Hubert Humphrey in the 1968 election. In the monument mythos, he ran against James Dean, extremely charismatic, extremely good at racing cars, and somehow the most popular candidate despite barely making any public appearances. 2 weeks before the election, Dean invited Nixon to skip the presidential debate and race cars at a track instead, and the two became close friends, a friendship that lasted through Dean's election win and both of his terms. Then, on February 22nd, 2022, the universe collapsed in an event called the Great Division. The Statue of Freedom fought the Air Force One Angel, Earth got destroyed, and reality tore apart. I know, a lot of things happened, but Nixon, who somehow had superhuman abilities by this point, killed the Horned Serpent on his way out and traveled to a new universe. He landed on the moon first because he wasn't sure how Earth would react to a god showing up unannounced, and to test the waters, he produced 3 extensions of himself based on DC's Trinity to see how humanity would handle them. The last son of Alcatraz, Superman but Kirk Allen, the D-Day Knight, Batman but Frank Sinatra, and the Queen of the Lunarians, Wonder Woman but Donyala Lunar. The experiment failed catastrophically. The night went missing, the last son was taken by the US government, and Nixon concluded humanity simply wasn't built for him. So he got rid of astronaut Ed Dwight on the moon during the first moon landing, and then rewrote reality itself into a comic book to stop the Crescent King from destroying the universe. The Horned Serpent. Imagine if George Washington never died, but instead got infinitely stretched across an alternate dimension and turned into a 291-year-old reality-bridging god monster. The Horned Serpent, also known as Hanadaganirs, was originally George Washington before he tried to chop down a special tree, got transported to the Horned Serpent metastructure, and got extended infinitely across that whole metastructure until he became something that bridges disparate realities. He's described as the man beneath America and the damned founding father, and his influence shows up across centuries. He tormented Ferdinand de Lesseps in his dreams until the guy went and built the Suez Canal. One of his limbs ended up inside the Statue of Progress, and another rose at Ellis Island, where President Ulysses S. Grant had it locked inside the Statue of Liberty's pedestal. From 1945 onwards, the United States literally gave people to this creature at Ellis Island, which is a horrifyingly literal interpretation of how America actually treats their immigration nowadays. During the Great War, the US destroyed another of his limbs and used the skull to power a weapon called the anti-airship Death Ray, because the monument mythos has the best names for anything. In 1980, the Serpent attacked Las Vegas and triggered the unification of 1980, and in 1985, his Statue of Liberty limb broke out at the same time as his Statue of Progress limb, with the resulting entity getting the public nickname Liberty Lurker. Then on February 22nd, 2022, Washington's birthday, the Serpent finally escaped during the Great Division, and the resulting reality tear destroyed Earth. Nixon hunted him down afterwards because he's literally the only guy who can, but only after he'd already done the damage. He's basically what happens when Manifest Destiny becomes a literal, eldritch horror. The Singularity. For most of Vitacarnis, you spend your time worried about the meat, the trimmings, the mimics, the harvesters, the various horrors that keep showing up to consume people in increasingly creative ways. The Singularity is the thing that's been controlling all of them this entire time. Verum Carnis, Latin for truth of the flesh, is a 1-meter dark glass sphere with a glowing red core that floats unsupported in the air and emits radio frequencies no human technology can decrypt. There are 7 of them, designated V1 through V7, and they were originally worshipped by the Neutral Occult before CARCAS raided Facility Zero in a remarkably easy operation that the Singularities almost certainly orchestrated themselves. Once CARCAS had them, they started running tests, and quickly discovered that any dead flesh placed near a singularity gets converted into cruel, the substance that produces every other carnis species, which means the singularities are the source of literally everything in the meat horror food chain. They communicate through radios and television, can dematerialize entire colonies of carnis into red particles and absorb them into themselves, and they presented to the CARCAS researchers as 7 distinct personalities: the bored one, the curious one, the lazy one, the chatty one, to study how humans would react to the variation. In necrotic wound, the act drops, and they all start speaking in unison, referring to themselves as I instead of we. They were always a single entity, just running a long cons. When Vincent Barrère infiltrated the facility to burn it down, the singularities watched on the security cameras, decided he had more potential than any of the previous researchers, opened a path for him, and then absorbed every captive carnis on the way out, fused into a giant manta ray-like eldritch creature called the Merged, and presumably collided with one of the monoliths to evolve into Phase 2. What looked like an escape was actually a planned upgrade. Phase 2 was always the destination. Cephalopodan Lunar Progenitor. When Patrick Fisher, pilot of Stargoose 6, first saw the Cephalopodan lunar progenitor, he jokingly compared it to his great-aunt Patricia, and the name stuck, which is honestly the most appropriate response to seeing something like this. Because the Cephalopodan lunar progenitor is a Class 0 celestial entity, a smooth cube-shaped horror with 8 massive tentacles and a giant orifice in the center where it gives birth to sentient moons. Yeah, gives birth. Because while you spent the entire series thinking the awakened moon was the villain, the actual antagonist of the moon woke up is the eldritch tentacle cube that made it. In 10,000 BC, the lunar progenitor and several others of its kind invaded the solar system and obliterated the original moons of every planet that had them. Earth got hit too. The original moon was destroyed, the debris bombarded the surface, and the resulting tidal instability triggered earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, and storms that wiped out the existing ecosystem. But after that, the progenitor gave birth to a sentient copy of the moon, dropped it into Earth's orbit, and let it lay dormant until the Apollo 11 mission in 1969 woke the whole thing up. This is the same story for Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. All of their moons got swapped out for sentient counterparts that turned the planets themselves sentient. Mercury, Venus, and Mars got skipped, presumably because Mercury and Venus don't have moons to begin with, and Mars apparently wasn't worth the trouble. When Neptune later left the solar system through a wormhole, the lunar progenitor showed up specifically to punish it, sticking its tentacles into Neptune like a cosmic disciplinary parent before the taxman pulled Neptune away. So every awakened planet, every catastrophe, the whole premise of the series, all of it traces back to a tentacle cube that just keeps showing up and giving birth to moons. So yeah, Patrick was right to call it Patricia. The boiled one. Fen 228 doesn't need to step on your planet to ruin your life, he just needs you to remember his face. The boiled one, classified as Fen 228 by the Ephrata branch, is a tall, lanky, raw-skinned humanoid demon entity with a melted head, hair like spikes jutting out of his skull, and a black cloak that's basically just more of him. On August 13th, 2003, he hijacked a Pennsylvania broadcast of a nature documentary called Tree of Heaven and delivered his pitch directly to roughly 530 viewers. The pitch was simple. By remembering his face, viewers would summon a physical manifestation of him while they slept, after which they'd wake up unable to move. And it worked. Out of the 530 people who saw the broadcast, 509 of them ended up in pseudocoma or locked-in syndrome, fully conscious, completely paralyzed, only able to move their eyes. One victim said the face was living in his mind and feeding on his spine. Another reported hearing trumpets before falling asleep. Job Zamperini, a World War II POW who became the boiled one's main fixation, kept reporting that the entity was watching him through windows and following his grandson. When investigators interviewed him, the entity hijacked the actual broadcast of the interview to deliver an apocalyptic prophecy about scalding blood pouring from the sky and the laughter of thousands accompanied by trumpets, which is also the elevator pitch for most religions when you think about it. He's invisible to most naked eyes but visible to cameras and to whoever he wants to be visible to, can change his height at will and manipulates reality, perception, sound, writing, code, fear, blood, and his own size. The official safety procedure includes wearing earplugs, opening the Bible to Psalm 91:10, and writing a list of statements affirming you're a real human being on planet Earth. I guess it's up to you if you want to do that now, because you've now seen his face. The White Mask. In 1987, a film crew on Mount Greylock started seeing a tall figure in a white mask hanging around the tree line, which director Paul Morelli initially dismissed as some environmentalist trespasser. It was not, in fact, an environmentalist trespasser. The white masked thought form, usually called the White Mask, is the main antagonist of the Greylock tapes, a malevolent entity wearing a dirty, cracked white mask with hollow holes for eyes, nose, and mouth. There's a decent chance the mask isn't even a mask, it might just be its actual face. Either way, the rest of its body has never been clearly photographed, but witnesses describe it as a tall man, and the head shown bursting through a closet door in old odd ends suggests the rest of it is enormous. Forget strength or reality warping or any of the cosmic tier nonsense the other entities on this list specialize in. What this thing has is voice acting. When it broke into Arnold Rivers' house on April 8, 1987, it stalked through the home looking for him while imitating laughter, then cries for help, then birds chirping, then a police officer's warning, and finally, after killing him, a child's voice saying, "It's a monster," followed by laughter. The implication being that the White Mask has used these voices on prior victims to lure them out, which means somewhere in its history, it kind of murked some kids, and police officers, and animals, and added each of their voices to its repertoire like Pokemon attacks. It's also implied to be Tiffany Crisoldi's thought form, possibly the leader of all thought forms, and it operates with the kind of patient sadism reserved for predators that genuinely enjoy the chase. It hides in shadows, mimics the dying, and laughs after kills. Basically a slasher villain that can do sick impressions. The Elder Mimic. Most entities on this list are gods, planets, or reality warping abstractions, and then there's the Elder Mimic, which is just an animal that got really good at murking humans. Trucidatum canis, Latin for butchered flesh, is the fourth member of the Canis family and the apex predator of the entire Vita Canis ecosystem. It starts out as a juvenile, separates from the cruel, looks like a thin, sleek version of a trimming, and works its way up the food chain by ambushing increasingly larger prey. Once it metamorphoses into an adult mimic, it now exclusively munches on humans, and this is when it picks up the iconic look: bipedal, hunched, duck-footed, long arms, no fingernails, dark sunken eyes, clammy skin, and a mouth full of incisors arranged in a permanent smile that isn't actually a smile, just facial structure. It can also contort its body to fit inside furniture, which is the kind of evolutionary adaptation that makes you genuinely never want to own a couch again. If an adult gets a steady supply of humans, it can branch into one of two third-stage forms. The humanoid mimic looks more human, blends into crowds with hoodies, and hunts in public. You can spot one by the bulging eyes, long fingers, uncanny smile, damp skin, and digitigrade walk. The elder mimic is what happens when a mimic gets too much food. It evolves into a 10-foot-tall predator with bullet-resistant black skin, a pale pink face, no nostrils, a sharp bony beak that degloves flesh from bone, and teeth that have shifted further down the throat for more efficient swallowing. The cult of the Carnis calls it God's ultimate warrior, the perfect killing machine, which is the kind of branding you only get when your fan base is basically the army, but with a keen interest in the most dangerous predator in the world. The only weak point is the face, but the chances of you actually hitting it is about the same as Megan Fox asking me out for drinks. If you really enjoyed this video, please like, comment, or subscribe. If you don't, the bored one's gonna find you. Thanks for watching.